Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is able seaman Philip Armstrong. We warmly welcome the family of Private Leonard Birdwood Hateley, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Please sit if you wish to do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the hearts of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Leonard Hateley. Leonard Birdwood Hateley was born on the 3rd of April 1917 in Nil, Victoria, to William and Hilda Hateley. He attended state school at Nil and nearby Kiata before going on to work as a farmhand. Hateley's birth certificate originally gave his name as Leonard Bainwood, and it wasn't until he was 21 that the error was corrected. 3 years later, on the 18th of March 1941, Hateley joined the 7th Battalion Volunteer Defence Corps in Nil, a part-time volunteer military force modelled on the British Home Guard. 2 of Leonard Hateley's brothers also enlisted. Victor remained with the Volunteer Defence Corps through the war, and Albert went on to serve as a sergeant with the 2nd 14th Field Regiment. After almost 2 years with the Volunteer Defence Corps, while stationed in the Northern Territory, in February 1943, Hateley transferred into the regular army, enlisting with the 2nd Australian Imperial Force and joining the 2nd 7th Infantry Battalion. On the 24th of April 1944, Hateley left Cairns on board the troop ship Duntroon, arriving at Lae in early May and spending much of the year in Lae, Bougainville and the Treasury Islands. In mid-November, the 2nd 7th landed in New Guinea for its final campaign. It was engaged mainly in arduous patrolling to clear the Prince Alexandra Range on the northern coast of New Guinea and the Torricelli Mountains to the west. This continued offensive harassing reduced the morale of the Japanese troops. When it was discovered that Japanese from North Bougainville were withdrawing along the eastern coast to Numa Numa, the time seemed opportune to increase the pressure along the Numa Numa Trail and to attempt to reach the coast. In the process of the crossing the dividing range, on the 12th of May, the 2nd 7th Battalion, supported by mountain guns, captured Smith's Hill. It then began driving the Japanese from Tiernan Spur, Wearns Hill and Berries Hill. On the 9th of July, Private Leonard Birdwood Hateley was killed during the fighting around Berries Hill. He was buried nearby, underneath a wooden cross featuring his name, but was later reburied at Port Moresby, Bomana War Cemetery. He was 28 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Leonard Birdwood Hateley, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and we wish you all a very good evening.